Um, I have two more of these types of personality disorders left. And I'm going to move on to something else. Still kind of related, but yeah, which is kind of cool. But I'm going to talk about dependent personality disorder, otherwise known as DPT. So this is a very sensitive subject, and obviously if anyone gets triggered by stuff like this, just be careful and be warned. And anybody who ever watches this channel or any of these videos knows that my brain doesn't hold any kind of information ever. It just doesn't, not anymore. So I do use Notebook, and yeah, it's part of the reason why I don't upload videos on a regular basis, because I have to like do a lot of research and then like write it all down and get it into a position where I know what I'm talking about. So dependent personality disorder is a type of anxiety disorder, which I think a lot of people kind of know that. It's something that's touched upon sometimes in the media. They're the people that you see that are like the stalkery kinds of people. They latch on to people, they have no real identity kind of things. It's not so much talked about now, but there was a time where DBT was kind of in the wind a bit. People talked about it. It was on TV programs. It's one of those that people kind of latched onto for a while. Long time ago, we're talking like 20th century, end of the 20th century. It was something that I kind of, when I thought of personality disorders, it was something that almost immediately came to mind, So somewhere in the back of my head, I know that it was something that I'd heard of before. So yeah, whereas a lot of the other ones I hadn't. So people with DBD, they feel very helpless. They feel very kind of incapable of taking care of themselves. They feel they're very submissive people. They can't make decisions for themselves. They have a lot of trouble making decisions. They feel like they need to be taken care of. They rely on everybody else to make their decisions for them, right down to things like what to wear on a daily basis. So they rely on things for whether it is, and even down to their emotional and obviously their physical support. And again, they are classed as people who are very clingy or needy people. And yeah, before you ask, it is generally women. Most people with DBD are women. We have personality disorders that are generally more for men, and now we have one that is generally more women related. It's weird, but we do have some that are very gender specific, and although both men and women get both of these conditions, there are certain personality disorders that affect certain genders, and this one affects more women than it does men. The one thing that I found very consistent about doing all of these videos is that they don't always know the causes of personality disorders. A lot of them haven't been very well researched, or they don't know enough about them. There are a few that are very well known. They understand them really well, but they don't understand a lot of them. They just aren't well enough researched yet, which I think is a real shame, because I think if they do, if they get the research done, if they can actually learn to understand these conditions, there might be a way to stop them from happening more often than they are in people. But again, there has been some research done, so they have found those who experience things like separation anxiety or chronic physical illnesses in childhood or teenage years. It is very much childhood or teenage years. If they find this, they are at much higher risk of getting it. And also they found that if they've got like overprotective parents, because, or, you know, it makes them more susceptible, because they believe there's like a biological or physical development kind of psychological kind of factors play there. And with overprotective parents, that all comes into play, because when the parent becomes overprotective, they wrap their kids up in little bubbles. And if they actually could do that, they would. You know, they don't like them getting dirty. They don't like them being outside or far away from them. They actually cause like psychological damage in their children, because they don't want them to be like, they actually cause them to be afraid of the whole world. If they're not close to their parent, they'll be too afraid to be out in the world. I mean, there are overprotective parents where the kids completely rebel and they're fine because they explore the world and they learn to like be okay. But it can go the other way around, and I think that's what they're talking about. The ones that, where they've got overprotective parents that have wrapped their kids so tightly that they can't function outside for fear of abandonment, for fear that the world's going to swallow them whole. Without the parent there to make their decisions for them, tell them everything's okay, there's something horrible that's going to happen to them, because that's what they've been taught their whole life. You know, parents are so overprotective that they can't think straight. You know, and I think that's what they're kind of that's the kind of word they're talking about, which makes a lot of sense. You know that's going to have like psychological damage on someone. You know that's going to produce those kind of very susceptible feelings of they can't do anything for themselves because they've never done anything for themselves ever, and that crippling fear of being completely abandoned. So it makes them far more susceptible to things like, you know, a dependent personality, because they're constantly dependent on their parents for everything from a very young age, and they've never been allowed to explore independently. And that is not the same, I'm going to say this right now, it is not the same as a parent having a special needs child. I am going to make that very, very clear, because parents with special needs children are an entirely different thing. Because depending on the special needs, it would depend on the level of care that is needed. That is not what that is talking about. They're talking about parents of children that are normal, not special children. And if you have a child who is, you know, disabled, who needs constant care, who needs to be helped 24/7, that is not the same as being an overprotective parent. If you have, like I have, an autistic child, you know, and that autistic is non-verbal or struggles to walk or is in any way has some kind of learning disability, regardless of anything else, they need their parent to help them. My son, I am very lucky, he has some degree of independence. I try really hard to nourish that independence. He, however, is trying really hard to cling to me. You know, But at the same time, he's really looking forward to going to university and having a job and a career. But he doesn't want to leave home. Whereas I'm actively trying to encourage him to go into an independent living situation. You know, it's not easy having special needs children, and if they need 24/7 care, you are not an overprotective parent, you are a parent of a special needs child. There's a fine line, and there is a difference, you know, but there is a fine line, and there is a massive difference between special needs care, overprotective parent of a child who is fully capable of living their own life, capable of making their own decisions, and capable of doing everything that you as a parent can do. So if your child is fully capable of going out into the world, making friends, living their life, making their own choices, without any help from you, and you hinder that by forcing them to live in your little bubble because you are too afraid to let that child go, you are an overprotective parent. That's kind of what they're going for. I had to get that out there because it's not the same thing. Okay. And breathe. Right. Moving on. Hey, what time is it? 11 minutes. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, this one I couldn't find a lot on. There are loads of symptoms to this. I mean, loads of symptoms to this. I mean, the list was quite big. I might actually have time to do most of this in one video, which would be really good. So people with DBT, their symptoms are quite similar, but quite varied. So they are emotionally over-dependent on others tend to be very needy and clingy. They have very passive behaviours, as well as a fear of separation. Right, that is their biggest symptom. Okay, and then we move on from that, and again we get things like they have the inability to make any kind of decisions, and again they need help with things like what to wear. They'll seek advice on what to wear, and then when they get that advice, they'll seek reassurance that it's okay to wear things like that. So they'll need advice about what to wear. They'll ask for advice about what to eat or what to drink, and then they'll seek that reassurance that it's okay. You know. Okay, they will avoid adult responsibilities and act helpless and passive and incapable. They will become, if they get married, people like this, if they end up married, or, you know, they will be completely dependent on that spouse for everything that their husband or wife, depending on their orientation, and the gender of the person with dependent personality, will have to take on the role of almost a parent figure for their partner. They will have to pay all the bills, they will have to do all the cooking or the cleaning, and they will have to tell them what to wear, how to wear it, how to eat, how to do things, because they will constantly seek reassurance that they're doing the right thing, and that what they're doing is, and the decisions of what they're doing, I couldn't imagine it. And if they don't have spouses, they'll seek that reassurance from family and friends, or even right down to things to where they're working and living if they manage to leave home. Okay. They have an intense fear of abandonment and feel devastated, even helpless, if and when a relationship ends. So if they get into a relationship, it will be the end of the world if that relationship ends. But they won't stop and take all that in, give them time to heal and whatever else. They will move right on. They can't be single. These are the types of people that you can imagine they will never be single. So if they ever got into a relationship, they'll move from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to, it'll be, they will never, ever, ever stay single for more than a minute. They can't. They cannot be alone. They can't be alone. They are exceptionally oversensitive to criticism, which you can obviously imagine just purely because, you know, if they need a reassurance that what they're wearing, what they're eating, how they're living, where they're working, if they need somebody to make those decisions for them and they need the reassurance that how they're living, working, breathing, living, you know, is correct and okay, you can imagine if somebody criticised that, it would devastate them. You know, they are completely pessimistic. And it's purely because they lack a lot of self-confidence. And they actually do believe they cannot look after themselves. They believe that. They actually do believe they can't look after themselves. I mean, can you imagine how that feels? I can't. I can never imagine feeling like they are completely incapable of looking after myself. I mean, my son has said to me hundreds of times that he never wants to live on his own because he doesn't think he can do it. And yet, I believe he can, as long as he had the right support system around him. You know, he would need a lot of support. If he moved into an independent living situation, he could get the support he needs to help him with everyday things, because decisions are difficult for him as an autistic. But for somebody who is a normal human being, you know, with no issues like that, somebody who is not neurodivergent, you know, or someone who isn't special neurodivergent or anything like that, to actually believe they cannot, no, that to me would be awful. I couldn't handle that. I mean, so, I mean, you can understand why they then avoid disagreeing with everybody. Just so they do not lose any approval from anybody. They don't want to lose that approval and support. It's such a massive fear for them that they will never disagree with anybody. They are people pleasers, which is completely understandable considering everything else. You know, they will please everybody. They will just agree with everybody. So they have no opinions of their own either, if they're going to agree with everybody. And you just, oh my God. You know, and the fact they don't believe they can live on their own means that they obviously have difficulty being on their own. You know, I mean, these symptoms kind of roll one into the other, into the other, into the other. And as I sort of sat there and looked at all of them, I realised that all of these symptoms are doing is explaining how these people live inside their head. You know, I mean, they're even willing to tolerate mistreatment and abuse. I mean, of all things, just to keep that support and the approval of somebody. I mean, these people are a danger to themselves. I mean, all these symptoms are doing. I mean, whereas a lot of the other ones, they are, yeah, they tell you, they give you some kind of insight as to how they kind of think. But a lot of them showed things they have no control over. This list of symptoms tells you exactly how they live on a daily basis. Every thought and fear and feeling that goes through them all day, every day. I mean, they place the needs of caregivers above their own. They will constantly give everybody everything they need, and they will be completely naive to everything, you know. And then they'll fantasize about it, fantasize about the life they could have. I mean, you just, this is the kind of thing that you sit there and you go, this is what you think and feel every single day of your life. These aren't just symptoms to me. This is a complete insight into everything that you do and say and think and feel every day of their lives. Whereas the other ones, you had things like, oh, they suffer with this and they have that and they do this and they do that and they behave like this and they behave like this and it's out of their control and they can't help it and they know it's this and they know it's that. And with this, it's a complete and utter list of their life 24/7. And it just rolls. And you just sit there and you think, right, so these are the people that will happily be abused. These are the people that can't do, that wish they could be like everybody else, but are so afraid of living like that. So afraid of the abandonment, so afraid to be alone, that they will let the whole world walk all over them to the point where it could kill them. That is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. You know? And the strange thing is, to get diagnosed with DBD, is they actually first have to rule out borderline personality, because they actually share similar symptoms. Because borderline personality responds with fear of abandonment, only they have a rage in them that it's empty. They have a rage and they have emptiness. They don't feel anything. People with borderline personality, they don't feel anything. It's emptiness. You know, and they get angry. It's opposite. Whereas DPD respond to that fear of abandonment with complete submission. And then they seek a relationship to maintain their dependency. You know, and then doctors, once they've ruled all that out, it's the doctors who then diagnose DBD, because they have to start a medical and psych evaluation, which is strange that it's a doctor doing this and not a psychiatrist, but it's the doctors that start it, because they have to do a physical exam as well. Because they have to rule out any kind of physical illnesses that could be affecting the brain. So I'm assuming we're talking maybe I did try to find it, but I couldn't. The actual reason why they needed to do a physical exam. But they do need to do a physical exam to make sure that it's clear of any illnesses that could actually be producing the symptoms of DBT. So I'm assuming things like brain scan or seeing a neurologist, but I couldn't actually find it. I don't know why I couldn't find it. maybe I wasn't looking in the right place, but I couldn't actually find it. It just kept referring me back to the same freaking websites, and I just couldn't find it. So if that's all clear, they refer them to a psychiatrist who will then give them a proper in-depth psyche eval and give them a proper diagnosis. Treatment's always really simple for this. They need talking therapies, they need psychotherapy or CBT, and it's because there are complications with dependent personalities, because they are at risk for depression and anxiety, as well as things like substance abuse and phobias, and because they're at risk of being abused as well. They have to put a prevention plan in place, which is not very easy for people like that. So with psychotherapy and CBT, they have to help them become more active and independent and learn to form better relationships and understand how to become more independent. So they are literally in there to learn how to be independent, how to make decisions, how to kind of stand up for themselves a bit, how to make those decisions for themselves. They're learning how to be, how to stand on their own without putting themselves in danger. It's a long process. Because they need to learn to form healthy boundaries and relationships. It isn't easy, especially if they're already in an abusive one. So they do have to be very careful, and the risks are really high. If they are suffering from anxiety and depression, they can be put on medication. Other than that, there is no medication for it. Can say, when looking through all this, people with dependent personalities don't actually self-harm, from what I can find. They are more at risk of being killed by their partners than actually harming themselves. And I think that scared me more than ever. It must be, I think that's one of the worst ones that I've looked into. All the rest, there is some form of culpability. But when it's somebody else who has your life in their hands and you allow it, I think that's almost worse, because you're allowing the beatings, you're allowing this kind of behaviour to go through with your life. And you're so afraid to walk away from it that you're just willing them to kill you. In a sense, it's almost like it's almost the same as self-harming or suicide, without actually being either one of those. Because you're willingly and allowing these people to do this to you, because you're so afraid of being alone. The crippling fear up here of walking away, not because you're afraid of the person, but you're afraid to be on your own. You're afraid of being single, you're afraid of being on your own, you're afraid of being you're afraid of. To me, that's got to be one of the worst feelings ever. That you spend your whole life feeling so no, I can't. I could never put myself in that place. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I hope you all have a good day. I will be doing one more personality disorder after this, and then moving on to something else. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.